Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Qualitative Research Hub. In previous video, we were talking about code a qualitative perspective. Today, in this video, we'll further learn about codifying, developing categories, and theory building using qualitative research methods. Coding. Coding in qualitative research is comprised of processes that enables collected data to be assembled, categorized, and thematically sorted, providing an organized platform for the construction of meaning. Williams and Moser, 2019. Now, all these references are given in the last slide. If you want to further go in detail for coding in qualitative research, you please follow these references. Coding. As we all know, coding is not a precise science. It is primarily an interpretive act. Check this example for coding. He cares about me. He has never told me, but he does. He's always been there for me, even when my parents were not. He is one of the few things that I hold as a constant in my life. So it is nice. I really feel comfortable around him. Now, after reading this paragraph, what kind of coding you would be doing? What words you will be using for coding this text? For example, one may say it gives you a sense of self-worth or stability, or we can also say that comfortable. This, or you may find that all these three codes which are written here may not be suitable to use according to your research question. Did you agree with the codes we used on a previous slide? Did other words or phrases run through your mind? We chose a simple text paragraph coding for learning purpose. However, on advanced study levels, depending on the researcher's academic discipline, ontological and epistemological orientations, theoretical and conceptual framework, or even the choice of coding method itself influence the coding process, and some code attributes more evocative meaning to data. Now, there are two different terminologies we often use during coding. These are coding and encoding. When we reflect on a passage of data to decipher its core meaning, we are decoding. When we determine its appropriate code and label it, we are encoding. Coding is simply a transitional process between data collection and more extensive data analysis. Here you can find that we are having three different processes during coding of any text or data or paragraph. You can find that we can do coding for patterns. We can use filters to code the paragraph, and we can do coding as a heuristic. For short excerpt, the researchers usually assign unique codes for the given set of data. For large and complete data sets, you'll find that several to many of the same codes will be used repeatedly throughout. So we can say the researcher's job is to find repetitive patterns of actions across the data. Several to many codes will be used repeatedly throughout. These recurrences of the same codes are both natural and deliberate, due to the repetitive patterns of actions and consistencies in human affairs. and deliberate because one of the coder's primary goal is to find these repetitive patterns of actions and consistencies in human affairs as documented in data. For example, Mrs. Jackson rises from her desk and announces, "Okay, you guys, let's line up for the lunch." Row 1. 5 children seated in the first row of the desk rise and walk to the classroom door. Some of the seated children talk to each other. So we can assign a code for this lining up for the lunch. Here again, Mrs. Jackson looks at them and says, "No talking, save it for the cafeteria." We can assign a code as it is a kind of a sentence which shows managing behavior. Row 2. 5 children seated in the second row of the desk rise and walk to the children already standing in the line. Now, how you're going to code this line? We can say lining up for the lunch. Now here you can say we have used one code twice because there is a similarity in the text in a given set of data. When you search for patterns in coded data to categorize them, understand that sometimes you may group things together, not just because they are exactly alike, but because they might also have something in common. So we have to look for the similar patterns across the data. A pattern can be characterized by similarity, things happen the same way. Differences, they happen predictably in different ways. Frequency, the number of times the similar kind of things are repeated across the data. Sequences, that for example one thing leads to another thing. Correspondence, here we can say that they happen in relation to the other activities and events. Causation, one appears to cause another. Yeah, so there is a slight difference between causation and sequence. The sequence may not be based on causation. Sequence is that something happens in certain order. So we can say one thing happens and then something else happens after that. For example, we use the children during the lunchtime and going to the cafeteria and then having the lunch and discussions. Coding filters. Now, for qualitative inquiry, the act of coding requires that you wear your researcher's analytic lens. How you perceive and interpret what is happening in the data depends on what type of filters cover that lens. For example, there is just no place in this country for illegal immigrants. Round them up and send those criminals back to where they came from. Now, if you read this sentence, I'm going to use 3 different researchers, their perspective and how they're going to use this sentence, how they're going to code this sentence based on their background, discipline, and research question. Researcher 1. A grounded theorist using Nvivo Plus, keeping the data rooted in the participant's own language, might quote the datum is no place for the illegal immigrants. Researcher 2. A second researcher, an urban ethnographer employing descriptive coding to document the categorized breadth of opinion stated by multiple participants, may quote the same datum as immigration issues. A third researcher, a critical race theorist employing values coding to capture and label subjective perspectives, may quote that exact same datum as xenophobia. Now here you can see that the data is same, but based on the discipline and research method and coding methods and research question, you may find that all these researchers have used different kind of coding to code the same data. Coding as heuristic process. Coding is a heuristic process. Heuristic is a Greek word that means to discover. An exploratory problem-solving technique without a specific formula to follow. We can say coding is cyclical. Means you can use one cycle for coding, second cycle of coding, third cycle of coding, fourth cycle of coding, until you can come up with a kind of codes which you can categorize, and later you can develop theory out of them. So we can say the coding is cyclical. Really is the first cycle of coding data perfectly attempted. Second cycle and possibly the third and the fourth and the so on of recording further manages, filters and highlight and focuses for salient features of the qualitative data record for generating codes. Categories and themes. Concepts, grasping meaning or building theory. From codes to categories. Once you have done coding up to a certain level, you can further categorize these different codes into different categories to come up with some themes across the data. From codes to categories. Codifying and categorizing. You started as a researcher, we start from coding, then we build categories, and then we try to recode and recategorize, which ultimately leads to the theories. So as we are using qualitative research method, here we're using grounded theory method of qualitative research from the work of Barney Glaser and Anselm Strauss, aligned with the Chicago School of Symbolic Interactionism, which rose to prominence in the early part of 20th century. Glaser, 1967. To codify is to arrange things in a systematic order, to make some part of system or classification. To categorize, when codes are applied and reapplied, you are codifying. Categorizing for qualitative data. Coding is a method that enables you to organize and group similarly coded data into categories or families because they share some common characteristics. From codes to categories. As we were talking about grounded theory method. The grounded theory method is one of the first qualitative methods to have a systematic approach for codifying and categorizing data in order to generate theory. Here we are trying to summarize what we have learned during this lecture. We've learned how we code using different processes, and from codes we develop categories, and from categorizing the codes we try to build a theory. So during that process we are involved in recoding and recategorizing. We are involved in developing themes and categories. We are advancing in themes and categories, leading to processes and concepts. Our ability to show how these themes are and concepts systematically interrelate lead towards the development of theory. Corbin and Strauss, 2008, page 55. Now here you can see it's a code-state theory model where we are going from particular to the journal. As we are using qualitative research methods, we create codes. Here you can see these are codes which we have developed. Based on these codes we categorize the data. We develop categories. These categories are further developed into themes and concepts. These themes and concepts are further developed in theory. These are certain references which I have used during slides. You'll find there is a book, The Coding Manual for Qualitative Researchers by Johnny Saldana. Then there are certain qualitative research papers. And thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more videos. See you in next video.